What is going on, everyone? My name's Northy, and I'm back for the round review. Round 18, very, very interesting round altogether. A lot of different, narratives taking place now. A lot of different teams writing their own script. The biggest ones, I think, for the week are Sydney and Essendon. Essendon finally making the top 8. Interesting to see whether they'll keep it there. But they've also got Sydney now actually pushing for premiership contention, which I think after last year, not many people expected. Also, players like Sam Walsh now really challenging Patrick Cripps in terms of the best player at Carlton. It's going to be very interesting what happens over the next few weeks leading into the final series. I'm hoping that North Melbourne can make the, the top 17 because I can't believe that Melbourne drew with Hawthorn. That put me in such a sour mood. I was so sad with that result because I don't want to come last this year. I'd be much happier coming second last, but seeing Hawthorn tied up with Melbourne, I don't know how that happened. I curse Melbourne. I can't stand Melbourne now. Oh man, I can't believe it. But look, at the end of the day, whether we come last or not, a high draft pick is coming for us. We got Jacob Edwards in the mid-season draft, and hopefully we'll be able to get some more great players coming from the future drafts anyway. So hopefully this round was good for you guys. I know for most part it was decent for me. It was pretty alright. We actually did better in top 4 compared to last week somehow, and I'll show you what I mean in a sec. But first we go to star powers. Now this one, interesting. If we had stayed the same with a few things, we would have gotten a prize card. If I had this lineup, we would have had a prize card. Instead, I actually had Jordan Ridley, and Jordan Ridley got me to 146. We are at rank 85 now for the season, and this is getting very, very scary. As you can see here, 20th was 634. We're a good 100 points away. However, players like Taron Thomas would have helped us tremendously. We had Taron in last week, and if we had had Joel Selwood in 2 compared to what we had last week, what we had the week before in David Mundy. If this was our lineup, we could have made some serious damage. Could have gotten to that 600 point and gotten very close to the top 20, but it was a very tough week. Very, very tough week. I'm not sure who had what and what actually, made it better for others. But Brodie Grundy had a pretty disappointing game for what he's used to. As you can see, he averages the 3rd position, averages nearly 100 points. So to get 74 was kind of disappointing. Clayton Oliver had a really, really good game, 106 points. That's a top-notch game. If you remember, I was picking between Josh Kelly and Clayton Oliver as to who I was going to pick. Thankfully, we chose the right option there because Josh Kelly unfortunately went down with an injury. Then we go here, picked the right player in Jacob Hopper. He was the best one for our future picks, and we ended up picking him up. Good stuff there. And then we've got in here, as I said before, we picked Jordan Ridley. Jordan Ridley. But the week before we had Taron Thomas, and of course Taron pulls out a 23 disposal, 9 marks, a goal, a huge game from him. Probably his best game of his career so far. Beautiful stuff from him. And yeah, it was probably the legend that really let us down. As you can see, David Mundy only had 32, but our biggest one here was Josh Kennedy. He had 81. Yeah, very interesting to see who really makes the most effect. I'm going to stick with David Mundy. As I always say, you got to stick with your guns. And so I'm going to stick with pretty much the same one except Taron Thomas switching up instead of Jordan Ridley, because as much as Jordan Ridley is good in the backline, he was Essendon's best and fairest. Taron Thomas is becoming a lot more of a mid-focused player, a mid to forward, which for North Melbourne, being a forward probably isn't too great, but midfield to forward, North Melbourne are actually starting to put up some really good fights. So I could imagine that North should be able to be a lot more, active in the forward line compared to what we were at the start of the season. So Taron Thomas, huge game last week. Hopefully we'll get similar numbers from these guys next week. Hoping for at least 600 points because we were quite short on that this week. But who knows? Who knows what'll happen? Obviously, we always aim for double digits rather than triple. So a bit of a disappointing week for star powers. That's where I'm going to end it there. Then we go over to our top team, and as you can see, the 4 here, I stuck with it. I stuck with my guns Jack Steele wasn't the best for the round. It ended up being Sam Walsh. I thought it was Jack Steele, but you can see it's only 1 point difference. It's only 1 point. Jack Steele had the 8 marks, the 7 tackles, 37 disposals, and a goal. Sam Walsh had the 39 disposals, 9 marks, 5 tackles, and a goal as well. So you can see there's not much separating them. There's really not too much I could have done here. Jack Steele has still managed to be the most consistent player I've had so far. Consistently over 120 or over 110, 100, whatever you want to say. He's consistently getting huge numbers, but you can see there were a lot of midfielders who had big numbers. Probably the biggest surprise was Meningola. I did not expect Meningola to have that kind of game. Ben Keys is starting to catch my eye, but I'm not sure whether I, make him a huge player in my top 18. But because like top 18 spots are so hard to get sometimes, but I made the right decision this week for the top 18. You can see right here, wherever Jack McRae is. I can't see him. There he is. Jack McRae, only 80 points. You can see he got his 30 disposals, but he didn't do much else afterwards. I think he kicked 2 goals, but you really have to look for the players who are involved in the marks and tackles. That's why these guys are so good. Sam Walsh has been awesome for me. So these two are going to continue to be there. And you got to keep looking out for those players who can get involved with the marks and tackles. You can see everyone here, 6 marks, 6 tackles for these 3. Took Miller, a bit low on the marks, but a lot of tackles nonetheless. So I think Took even missed out on a couple. I think a few were pretty stiff. But yeah, you can see right here, I am not mad with my midfield pick. My backman pick, again, Rory Laird was the best. He just continues to be the best backman, so I keep him in there as long as I can. Grundy was probably the most, confusing to me. I didn't expect him to have such little impact and so little hit-outs as well. Tom De Koning did a very, very good job against him, and you gotta give him a hand because I mean he did pretty well. He had the 19 hit-outs against him, but you stopped Grundy from getting a lot. He did a very, very good job, and pretty much took Grundy out of it for the most part. Only 74 points, which is kind of disappointing. But Rowan Marshall was the best one. Not sure how many expected that, but. Lots of goals, I think, was what led him to a big week, and the disposals and marks were huge for him too. But I always have to stick with my guns. The only change may be Bontempelli. I'm not too sure, because you can see here, low marks, didn't kick a goal, but loads of disposals. I'm very, very interested to see when he picks it up, because with the Dogs, you don't see too many of the ball handlers, the midfielders, really getting touches on the ball. That's usually coming from players like the wingman. I even say the halfback flankman. Those guys across that line, they mainly take those marks and the tackles and all that kind of stuff, because these midfielders for the Dogs, Tom Liberatore? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Liberatore. Marcus Bontempelli and Jack McRae, they're all just getting hands off around the ball. Players like Lockie Hunter are the ones that are probably more effective when it comes to taking marks and tackles. So I'm very interested to see what Bontempelli will do this time round, because it was a little bit disappointing, I won't lie, but at the same time, I think I need to look for players who grab more marks. That's why I'm thinking about changing him up. But you can see here, 28th. We had 396 points, and 12th had 399. I believe that is the tie for 10th place, but just a little disappointing, that's all I can really say. 28th place was better than last week somehow, but with 396 points, we are literally 3 points off. So even with a change up here, we wouldn't have done it. We had the best backman, I'm going to stick with again. Brodie Grundy, probably the biggest disappointment. There was a lot up for grabs. If we had switched out to Max Gawn, it would have been a different story. All we needed was Brodie Grundy to have a good game, that's all. Very, very tough, but may change him up at some point. But for the moment, sticking with my guns, you got to do it nowadays, because for me, it always bites me back. So we look at our top 18, and this one was very, very interesting. I put Kyle Langford in. He didn't play, which honestly I didn't even realize. I watched the North Melbourne versus Essendon game. I didn't even notice he wasn't playing. But you can see here, we go over to Kyle Langford. He didn't play, and I'm not too sure why. I don't remember him not playing, but Josh Dunkley played. He ended up playing last week, and now he's not playing next week for COVID reasons, which is like really shocking. The amount of players that I'm having to constantly change in and change out and then forgetting is almost infuriating. Callum Mills was really, really unfortunate. He was one that went out of the GWS vs Sydney clash for being a close contact at an exposure site, I believe. So he ended up not playing. He was dragged out right before the game started, and so I literally can't do anything about that. That is completely unfair. So I have to change it up, and you can see here, our backmans weren't the best of choices this week. I thought Chris did a lot more than he actually did, but unfortunately not too much from him. Players like Zach Tui are starting to get a lot better. I don't think Aaron Hall is a player at the moment, but he gets a lot of marks. Just the backmen for the Roos seem to get a load of marks. You can see here, Zeeble had 7. He only kicked the ball. It's very interesting stuff, but he's a backman at the moment for North Melbourne, and yeah, he gets all of his possessions and all of that stuff in the back half, marking the ball, kicking it around. The Roos do it a lot compared to a lot of other teams, so I'd like to switch out some backmen here for, you know, North Melbourne backmen, because they'll get involved with the ball a lot more. I'm just not sure if Aaron Hall is in. Yeah, so Aaron Hall isn't a player for North Melbourne in the Teamcoach collection, which is a shame, but I mean, not much you can really do in that sense. But a few disappointments. I would probably have to say Petrarca. Petrarca got a lot of disposals early, but didn't do too much, or at least not as much as I thought he would have. Players like Tom Mitchell and Ollie Wines we've had in the lineup in the past. It's just every time I put them in, they disappoint me, and that's why I'm always so like on everyone's butt just about making sure you stick with your guns, because you really do not know who is going to shine compared to the rest of the league and compared to whoever else is playing, because Petrarca, he's been playing awesome this year, and he probably got some Brownlow votes, but I was very surprised with the lack of marks and tackles. I'm very, very surprised. Maybe a reason as to why Hawthorn ended up winning, because Hawthorn altogether played awesome. They played really, really well. But I'm going to stick with my midfield, I think, this week. Steele and Walsh, awesome. Parrish is a very interesting player. I think he definitely plays well. But sometimes it's a little bit sketchy, sometimes. And Touk Miller is, I think everyone's surprise of the year. Not many people expected Touk Miller to be this good. I'm really happy for him. I'm really, really happy for him. And so I keep him in as much as I can, because he can go off. He can have huge games. But yeah, obviously, we'll have to change up these two. I'm not sure when Langford comes back, if he's coming back next week. And Mills, if we're going off of the COVID protocols, will not play next week. So we will find a new player there, hoping that certain players, you know, do a bit more next week. Salem was probably a bad choice for this week, considering they were up against Hawthorn. Even though Hawthorn gave it to him, I did not expect, once I realised who Melbourne were playing, I realised that Salem wasn't going to be too busy that night, and especially if they were going to lose to him, it'd probably just mean that he wasn't doing enough of his job, hence why he still had a very, very low game. But that's my top 18 for the week, and I ended up getting 57 for that one. A few changes here and there, a few things unlucky that I wish I could have changed up, would have maybe gotten me into the top 10, but again, there's not much I can do in terms of Mills, especially. Say I switched him out for a Zach Tui or a Jaden Short, probably is the most likely out of all those choices, because I've had Short in before. Add 78 points onto that would have given me 1490, and that would have put me in the top 10. You can see how unlucky some people get. I can guarantee you a lot of people had Callum Mills in their lineup, and so people who may have not even had Sydney, may not have the Sydney best and fairest cards, they may have just gotten a blessing in disguise in that sense. So that gets them over the line. Maybe a few new players here. You can see there's someone in there, 3,671, who's number 7. He's done alright. They've done alright. Maybe it's because they just only started now, or maybe it's because they haven't really been going too much, or doing too much this season. We do not know, but hopefully next week I won't get as unlucky in terms of Callum Mills as I did the weeks before. Even some change-ups in the forward line, like having Taron Thomas, maybe Tom Hawkins probably would have helped. He would have put us over the line. Who knows, man? You got to make those changes, and unfortunately, as much as I wish hindsight was a factor in these games, it really isn't. There's not much I can do, but that's where I'm going to end it. Usually I do tips, but because I forgot to put them in, I unfortunately cannot show you guys what my scores would have been. But just so you guys know, I think I probably got about half. Obviously, I wouldn't have gotten the Melbourne Hawthorn one right. I did say in the video Essendon over, I said Essendon over North, and they eventually did so, even though I didn't want it to happen. I think I said Collingwood over Carlton, but the opposite happened, which really surprised me. Just a whole bunch of different things that I did not expect happening ended up happening. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I know that round 19 will be just as exciting, hopefully, with some big games too. Lots of upsets, and hopefully we'll actually get some games rather than COVID madness taking over, because I really don't hope it happens. I really hope we get a big week of football. So, thank you all so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you all in the next review and preview of round 19. See ya!